major snowstorm that struck Minnesota and Iowa in late December 2025 was one of the most severe winter storms in the history of the United States Midwest. Snow fell with incredible intensity, accompanied by strong winds that reduced visibility to near zero in many areas. The National Weather Service reported that the storm began on Monday, December 29th, with moderate to heavy snowfall and strong northwesterly winds. These conditions made road and air travel extremely hazardous, with thousands of flights canceled at major airports, including Minneapolis, St. Paul International Airport, and Des Moines International Airport. In Minnesota, snow fell relentlessly for more than 48 hours, covering roadways with a layer more than 12 inches thick. Temperatures plummeted to minus 20 degrees Celsius, further complicating conditions. Major highways such as Interstate 94 and Interstate 35 experienced extensive traffic congestion as vehicles were unable to navigate the icy roads. Police reported more than 100 traffic accidents in the first 24 hours of the storm, most of them caused by vehicles skidding on the icy roads. In Iowa, the same snowstorm caused major disruptions to air transportation. More than 1,300 flights were canceled across the United States, including at airports in the Midwest. Thousands of passengers were stranded at airports with no confirmed flight schedules. This situation was exacerbated by power outages in several rural areas of Iowa, forcing residents to seek emergency shelter in community centers. Beyond the direct impact on communities, the snowstorm also caused significant economic losses. Business activity ground to a halt, the distribution of goods was disrupted, and the tourism sector, usually bustling during the end-of-year holiday season, suffered a drastic decline. Hotels in ski resorts reported mass cancellations from international tourists. Farmers in rural areas faced significant losses as livestock struggled to survive the extreme temperatures and food distribution was disrupted. Meteorologists explained that the storm was triggered by the meeting of a cold air mass from the Arctic with a low-pressure system over the Pacific Ocean. This phenomenon created a jet stream that brought high humidity and dumped large amounts of snow. Experts warned that such extreme weather patterns were likely to become more frequent due to global climate change. Amid the storm, a series of accidents occurred on Interstate 35, which runs through Minnesota and Iowa. This highway became one of the most dangerous routes during the storm due to its thick snow cover and slippery ice. Initial reports indicated that more than 50 vehicles were involved in the pileup, including large trucks, buses, and private cars. Police and rescue teams worked around the clock to evacuate victims and clear the roadway for traffic. The accident exacerbated the emergency situation, with many motorists stranded for hours in freezing temperatures. The accident chronology indicates that the first collision occurred when a large truck lost control on southbound I-35 near the Minnesota-Iowa border. The truck skidded and struck several vehicles in front of it. Within minutes, dozens of other vehicles were involved due to limited visibility and slippery roads. Police immediately closed the roadway and diverted traffic, but the evacuation process took a long time due to the extreme weather conditions. The United States federal government immediately sent emergency aid to Minnesota and Iowa. The military was deployed to assist with the distribution of supplies, including food, blankets, and fuel to isolated areas. This effort was undertaken to ensure that basic needs were met even as the storm continued. Local media described major cities in the Midwest as ghost towns with empty streets, closed shops, and a complete standstill. The snowstorm also had a psychological impact on the community. Anxiety and uncertainty increased due to the uncertainty of when conditions would return to normal. Mental health experts warned that prolonged isolation due to extreme weather can trigger stress and depression, especially for those living alone. However, there were also stories of solidarity emerging amid the crisis. Many residents helped each other by providing food, lending power generators, or hosting neighbors whose homes were without heating. The storm is expected to subside in the coming days, but the recovery process will certainly take a long time. Roads must be cleared, power lines repaired, and logistics distribution restored. The government promised a thorough evaluation of the disaster preparedness system to better handle similar events in the future. Infrastructure analysis showed that the Midwest's electricity distribution system remains vulnerable to extreme weather, with many overhead lines susceptible to damage from snow. Experts recommended significant investment in underground cable systems and increased backup energy capacity to cope with emergencies. Furthermore, the transportation sector is also in the spotlight. Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, a major gateway to the Midwest, was completely paralyzed, causing significant losses for airlines and passengers. Many international travelers were stranded at the airport without any certainty about their flight schedules. The government plans to strengthen the airport's emergency response system by providing more shelters and logistics facilities to prepare for future storms. Socially, this snowstorm exposed inequalities in access to resources. Residents in urban areas received assistance relatively quickly, while those in rural areas had to wait longer due to snow-covered roads. This led to criticism of the state government for its perceived lack of responsiveness in distributing aid equitably. Several community organizations called for disaster policy reforms to ensure fairer and faster aid distribution. The storm's timeline revealed that the Meteorological Agency had issued an early warning system days earlier, but many residents were unaware of the storm's magnitude. This sparked debate about the effectiveness of emergency communication systems and the need for public education on extreme weather preparedness. Public policy experts emphasized that climate change is making weather patterns increasingly unpredictable, necessitating greater preparedness for the worst. In policy reflections, the state governments of Minnesota and Iowa announced they would increase funding for disaster preparedness systems, strengthen interagency coordination, and expand public education programs. This blizzard served as an important lesson that even modern infrastructure is not immune to the forces of nature, and that community solidarity is a key factor in overcoming crises. The blizzard that struck Minnesota and Iowa in late December 2025, accompanied by a series of accidents on Interstate 35, served as a stark illustration of the fragility of transportation, energy, and social life systems when confronted with extreme natural forces. Heavy snow, strong winds, freezing temperatures, and power outages paralyzed community activities, while the accident on I-35 highlighted that safety risks increase sharply when infrastructure is unable to withstand the stress of the weather. The impacts were not only economic losses, delays in logistics distribution, and the cancellation of thousands of flights, but also psychological trauma, anxiety, and social isolation experienced by residents. However, despite the crisis, solidarity emerged, demonstrating the strength of community. Residents helped each other, volunteers stepped in, and the government attempted to provide emergency assistance. This event served as an important lesson that climate change and extreme weather patterns are no longer a future threat, but an already present reality. A comprehensive evaluation of preparedness systems, increased investment in weather-resistant infrastructure, and public education on risk mitigation must be a priority. The snowstorms in Minnesota and Iowa, along with the accident on I-35, highlight that disaster preparedness is not just about technology, but also about policy, solidarity, and collective awareness.